We are live because once again, we can go live before the end of the game because Ohio State is just the greatest team in the world and knows how to beat East Coast Big Ten teams by a gazillion points. Hello, people. My name's Ori. Welcome to another Voice of College Football Ohio State post-game show. We got 3 minutes left here for the Buckeyes. It's 66-17 against Maryland. We'll get into a ton of conversations about what kind of stuff we saw in today's game. But first, make sure you like the video. Make sure you sub. We'll talk about that throughout the day. As soon as this Buckeye game ends, I'm switching over to Oklahoma, Texas, because Oklahoma, Texas is getting wild. As of right now, Oklahoma, I think, just converted a 2-point conversion. It's 41-41 in that game with 7 minutes left. And that result could affect Ohio State's ranking, because Ohio State's about to get this win here against Maryland again. And remember, I said last week after the Rutgers game, we need to see the Buckeyes play even better against Maryland, and they did significantly. Ohio State was fantastic. The defense looked good. There were a couple drives there. They were giving up a lot of yards, but a defensive touchdown. Chris Young had that pick six just now. Of course, if you're all coming in here watching the game, you obviously just saw that. Yeah, here's the defense. They've allowed 17 points, 33 rushing yards, and have gotten 5 sacks in today's game, whereas they had only 12 sacks in their last 3. So probably the best performance defensively for Ohio State this season against good competition. We'll get more people siphoning in here as we continue to talk about this. We're just waiting for the game to officially end. This is the live score right now, in case you haven't seen it. Got some discussion topics to get into, but, I mean, let's face it. The day was ruled not just by the great defensive play, but by the offense, who was unbelievable again. The offense was amazing, even better than they were last week. I mean, CJ Stroud, once again, just phenomenal in the passing game, completing all those throws. What were his stats? 406 passing yards for 5 touchdowns, 24 of 33 completion rate. That is remarkable. Longest Big Ten Conference home winning streak. Ohio State's now at 21. They are 1 shy of tying Michigan for the most. Longest Big Ten Conference winning streaks. Now they're up to 20. 20 straight Big Ten Conference wins for the Ohio State Buckeyes. That is amazing. That is unbelievable. But we're getting close here to the final whistle. It's 3rd and 6. Maryland is not even using any of their timeouts. They're just letting the clock run out. And then we can get into all the conversations. I want to talk about how good CJ Stroud continues to be. I want to talk about Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Is this the best 1-2 wide receiver duo we've ever seen for the Buckeyes? Chris Olave specifically. Can we start discussing him being the best wide receiver in Ohio State history? Can we? It's possible. He had an amazing day today. The receivers look great. TreVeyon Henderson, again, is a monster. Everything is coming up Millhouse for Ohio State right now, and it's only getting better because other teams might be losing. So I think this game is pretty much over. Ryan Day is taking his headset off. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Oklahoma and Texas just to kind of see how that game's going to go on. Did Tia Malua play today? Didn't see him much on the field. I can check that for you. Defense looked good, but we still have to have work to do. The game has been over since second quarter. It has. You are right. Welcome, everyone, into the show. Another Ohio State game where it was over by the second quarter. Let me see if JT played. I want to see if there's a way that I can find specific defensive stats. That's always difficult. Defense here. I got it on defense. He did play. 1 tackle, 1 sack for JT, so he did play. Cheney. Get that answer there. All right, the game's final. It's over. Ohio State wins 66-17. Just JT, not JTTT. Yeah, I know it's just JT. Yeah, he played. So, great game for Ohio State. CJ Stroud looked better than he did against Rutgers. The offense looked better than they did against Rutgers. The defense looked the best it's been. But, you know, it's Maryland. Sure, Maryland was 4-1 coming to Columbus today, but who we beaten? Who did Maryland beat before coming to Ohio State? They beat West Virginia, Howard, Illinois, and Kent State, and then got obliterated by Iowa before coming here, and then they got obliterated by Ohio State. So Maryland, yes, might not be the toughest competition, but just like the Rutgers game, we're looking at execution. Defensive execution, I think, was the best we've seen the Buckeyes have all season. Some stats came up. They only had 12 sacks in their last 3 games, 5 sacks today, a defensive touchdown, a late pick 6 from Chris Young to get the score into the 60s for Ohio State. Just increasing your point total, increasing your point difference, huge for Ohio State. Keeps the momentum going in their favor. And if Oklahoma lose this game against Texas, it's going to be even further in their favor. I mean, I'm surprised that Oklahoma has roared all the way back. The way that Texas was playing, I thought Texas was going to run away with this game. But Oklahoma, fair play to them. They've looked really good here in the second half. No, I get that. It's just. No, absolutely. I think a lot of people would say, it's just. But I think, again, execution-wise, Ohio State is looking like one of the best teams in the country now. Since the loss to Oregon, they've improved drastically. They're looking really good, peaking just before the bye week. I think they'll peak further. I think they have there's a lot more to come for Ohio State. I think they're only going to get better. Who do they play? Indiana after the bye week, which I think we can all expect to be a win. But it's all going to be about, where that ranking is at that time. But performance-wise today, again, CJ Stroud looked great. But honestly, I thought the standout performances outside of the defense was the receivers. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were phenomenal today. Touchdown Oklahoma. So Oklahoma's just taken the lead against Texas. It's going to be, 47-41 before the extra point. So that's the thing. Maryland had athletes that had the ability to take advantage of our mistakes. They did, Ryan. I agree. Tua's brother, Tulia Tagovailoa, good athlete. I like what I saw from him. Ohio State's defensive line was able to get to him a lot. Tagovailoa, I think, had a lot of moments where he was trying to scramble out of trouble and he was trying to do too much. He kind of had 3 moves deep into the pocket, and sometimes he'd fumble, sometimes he'd get sacked. Athletic kid. I think he's a good athlete. Maryland has a lot of good athletes, but defensively they just couldn't do anything. And I think that brings me back to Olave and Wilson. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were making great running perfect routes, stop and goes, curl routes, crossing routes, slants, whatever you could think of. They were running them to perfection, bamboozling the Maryland corners and safeties. They were getting wide open, and CJ was throwing dimes to them, perfect passes to be able to get these touchdowns. And Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson both had huge days. Let me check out the stats here. Olave, 7 catches for 120 yards and 2 scores. Wilson had 5 catches for 84 yards and 2 scores. Phenomenal. Texas choked. Right now, Texas is choking the game away. They need to get a touchdown here quick. They're down 48-41. That's sort of going to be like our half watch party on the side while we talk OSU football. TreVeyon Henderson continues to be incredible. This kid is going to be in the NFL one day, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Was really impressed with his pass catching ability today. 4 catches for 67 yards and a receiving touchdown for Henderson. Oh, and he also had 16 carries for 102 yards and two rushing touchdowns, just to sort of add insult to injury, just to add even more stats to this remarkable season TreVeyon Henderson is having as a freshman for the Buckeyes. He's been fantastic. Looked great. He's quick. Great pass catcher out of the backfield. That's Ohio State. This is one of the most talented set of skill players I think we've seen in Buckeye history. TreVeyon Henderson has the potential to be one of the best running backs in this program. Garrett Wilson and Smith-Njigba are both very good wide receivers, great at their route running, very reliable catching the ball. Wilson had 6 targets, caught 5 passes. And Njigba had 6 targets, caught 5. But I think Chris Olave was the one who really shined today. He showed that he should be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, in my opinion. And he is slowly but steadily getting more into the conversation of being maybe the greatest receiver in Ohio State history. I want to see what you guys think about it, but that is a possibility. Chris Olave has put the numbers up for the Buckeyes. He's approaching the all-time touchdown record that David Boston holds. He's starting to get further and further up the record books for Ohio State. And he just looks like a phenomenal, phenomenal player. and he just keeps getting better. He's looked phenomenal throughout his entire college career, and he's looking better. He played 2 great games against Rutgers and Maryland. He's looked good all season. And he has somebody like CJ who is so good at finding him and throwing those perfect passes. But I can't count how many times how many times Olave was able to separate himself from the guy that was covering him, or even separate himself from the safeties. But there were so many times where there was no safeties, or there was a safety that just wasn't covering for whenever Olave was getting by his corner. Olave was untouchable today. Garrett Wilson too. Phenomenal. So I'm curious what you guys think. I want to hear some comments in the chat. Chris Olave, should we be discussing him as being one of the greatest receivers in Ohio State history? Is it too early to say that? Or are we seeing the greatest receiver in the Buckeyes history right now? Do we think we can beat Georgia or Alabama if we play them today, or is it a close loss? I still think that Ohio State cannot beat Georgia or Alabama. I want to see how Georgia plays against Auburn. Alabama's playing A&M. Alabama will beat A&M. I don't think Ohio. I think that's still a little too early to say. I want to see the Buckeyes compete against Penn State. I want to see how they play against Michigan. I want to see how they play against Michigan State. Michigan State's still undefeated. They beat Rutgers today. You can see on the bottom of your screen the other Big Ten scores. Michigan State beats Rutgers. I think they had a receiver with over 200 yards. Wisconsin's about to play Illinois. Of course, we got the big Penn State-Iowa game. That's a huge one coming up. And then Michigan in Lincoln against Nebraska tonight. Olave did have better QBs, Ryan Day's offense. Yeah, but I'm looking at the numbers standpoint. Fox Reporter said OSU has the nation's best offense. Maybe talent-wise. I think talent-wise, you could potentially say the Buckeyes have the best offense in the country. For sure, based off of the fact that, look, for those first couple of weeks, Travion Henderson was kind of the guy running the show. He was getting most of the yards. He was getting a lot of the scores. But I think these last 2 weeks, you're seeing different guys get into the fray. Olave, Wilson, Smith and Jigba. You're seeing Henderson. You're seeing Teague. These guys are all scoring points. And Williams and Mayan Williams isn't even playing. Oh, my God, bomb down the field by Texas. There's like a 60-yard throw by Texas. They're now in the red zone with 6.5 to go. A touchdown ties the game, an extra point. But that's the thing. I think from a production standpoint, Chris Olave has to be in the conversation for being one of the best Ohio State wide receivers ever. He has the resume, and sure, he has great quarterbacks throwing to him, but it doesn't make it any more or less of an achievement if he had a bad quarterback throw. If he had a bad quarterback throwing to him and he's still getting these yards, I think he's still in the conversation. And with the good ones, I think he is too. Chris Olave is a great talent. He looks phenomenal for the Buckeyes. He's running perfect routes. He's catching a lot of passes. He's getting a lot of yards, and he's getting touchdowns. He's helping separate Ohio State from a lot of the teams in the Big Ten. Williams has been injured, so that's why he hasn't been playing. I'm sure happy Xavier Worthy didn't stick with Michigan. Yeah. Physically, he might be game impact. I could put 2 ahead of Chris O. Yeah, I think we need to see a little bit more of what Olave can do in a big game situation. Because obviously he's never won a national championship. You think of some of the great OSU receivers, Michael Thomas, Santonio Holmes, David Boston, some other guys that probably don't come to mind to me right now. They performed in the big game situation. I want to see Olave put up these types of numbers when they play Penn State right before Halloween, when they play Michigan State, when they play Michigan. And even if Olave is getting doubled or not having a good game, they still have Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson to throw to. Garrett Wilson is one of the most underrated receivers in the country. I don't even know if he's underrated. I think he's just there. He's one of the best receivers in the country too. Ohio State has the best 1-2 punch in the receiving core that is in the country, in my opinion, right now. They just look great. 3rd and 11 here for Texas. This is a big play for the Longhorns. They need to get a first down here. I still think he is the second best back on the team. Who, Williams or Henderson? I think Travion's the best back on the team. Feeling better about CJ. Kids turn out to be. Yeah, that's the thing. He had a couple of missed opportunities there. Looked a little bit shaky against Oregon and Minnesota and Tulsa. I thought he looked fine against Minnesota in the second half. Against Tulsa and Oregon, he wasn't that phenomenal, but he's putting up numbers. He looks really good. They're developing chemistry with him. The offense is developing a lot more chemistry. They look a lot more comfortable with each other. And man, oh man, they look great. 4th and 11 here for Texas. They're going for it. They should. There's less than 5 minutes to go. Williams, I think, yeah, Williams is probably the second best back on the team. I'd go Henderson, Williams, Teague. We're just not seeing enough of Master Teague because Henderson and Williams, I think, are just better than him. Chris Carter, the GOAT receiver. I agree, David. I think that's a good call. I think you could definitely say Chris Carter is the greatest receiver at OSU. But that puts up another question. When you guys are talking about best receivers in college history for a college program, do you also take into account how their NFL career went? Because if you're taking into account, as a whole, as a football player, the greatest receiver to play at OSU, and you look at, you count what they did at Ohio State, what they did at the NFL level, then yeah, Chris Carter might be the answer. But if you're just looking at it from what they did at the college level, what they've done for the Buckeyes, maybe the answer changes. Maybe you change it to David Boston. Maybe you change it to Michael Thomas, Antonio Holmes, Chris Olave. So it's interesting to see just kind of how people, how their thought process goes for this type of question. Personally, I think you can separate it into two. The most talented, best resume for a wide receiver, I think, ever in Ohio State history belongs to Chris Carter. Hall of Fame NFL career, great college football player, definitely. If Chris Olave turns out to be a great wide receiver in the NFL and puts up these numbers, 4th and 11, incomplete for Texas, Oklahoma in the driver's seat. And we'll talk about the rankings here in a second. However, if someone was to say Chris O is the greatest wide receiver, I wouldn't argue. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a tough debate. It's a very tough debate. Any news on Haskell Garrett injury? Yakov, I am not sure. My guess is they're probably asking about that in the press conference. I'm going to pull up Twitter here on my phone and just check out to see what the live tweets are from the press conference with Ryan Day and some of the players, because we could get some news on Haskell Garrett. I know that he got hurt and that he was limping out of the medical tent during the game. So he didn't leave the game, but he was on the bench after he got hurt. So we'll see if there's an update about that. We'll keep you guys. We can't lose Garrett. Yeah, he's the best player on the defense. Haskell Garrett would be a big loss to the defense if he turns out to have a major injury. Caleb Williams is the guy for Oklahoma, by the way. Spencer Rattler shouldn't see the light of day, I think, for that team anymore. I don't think he plays anymore. Caleb Williams is a stud, great player for the Sooners. But yeah, can't lose Garrett defensively. Defense looked awesome. Great game from the defense. They had a tough test against a really athletic Maryland offense. This is probably the second best team Ohio State's played this season. Oregon being the best and Maryland probably being the second best. And they stomped them. They stomped them. They won by what? 49? 59? My math stinks. I'm so good at math. You know what I'm saying. I'm also, 49. I was right the first time. 49-point win for Ohio State. The second best team they've played this year, and they win by 49. And their offense scores 50-some points because their defense got another 7, a 66-point performance. But yeah, hopefully Haskell Garrett's okay. If Haskell Garrett's okay, then I think the defense can keep building from this. Big game against Indiana in 2 weeks. I think you have to see a similar type of performance that you saw against Maryland and Rutgers from Ohio State. Big completion percentage from C.J. Stroud, lots of touchdown passes, lots of yards on the ground and in the air for TreVeyon Henderson, and the defense needs to be able to give up less than 3 touchdowns. They gave up less than 3 touchdowns today. They looked the best they did all season. This is a slow handoff. Oklahoma's not doing themselves any favors here on this drive. The defense is never going to be the steel curtain. No, but the defense is improving. That's all you can ask for at this point. Like, I get why Ohio State fans have the high expectations. I'm an Ohio State fan. I do too. But we can't expect Ohio State to look like the best team ever, from the get-go. And I think that's what a lot of people's expectations were when the season started, that Ohio State should look like the best team ever at the get-go. I think the loss certainly lowered expectations a lot more. And now after sort of these bigger wins, the expectations get even bigger. But there's still, it's all about that improvement. Look, Alabama and Georgia are really the only 2 teams in the country that off of week 1, we can say like they need to be perfect every game, and we expect them to be perfect every game. This Ohio State team, I still don't expect them to be perfect every game. We still need to see them play the best of the best in the Big Ten. That Penn State game is going to be the big test. Maryland was a good test, though, for the defense to handle an athletic quarterback like Tagovailoa and their receivers being pretty fast. To be fair, Maryland were able to get a lot of yards. They were able to get a lot of passing plays together, but red zone defense was the best for the Buckeyes today. They were able to stop them in the red zone. Maryland was unable to get a lot of yards in that red zone area, and they were able to hold them to a couple of field goals or even hold them to, some 4 and outs, some turnover on downs, which is important. OSU greater than Georgia. Don't think so yet. To be seen. If Georgia loses to Auburn, still, I think Georgia's better than OSU. I think the growing pains are going away. That's what I would assume. You say, Troy, this is the team I was expecting. Yeah, this is the team we were expecting. This is the offense we were expecting. The defense, I think, performed better than what we expected. But we're 6 weeks in. The defense is improving. The offense is getting even better, which is just great to see. I think Buckeye fans would have been upset, and I think it's worthy to be upset about this if Ohio State only won this game by like 20 or 30 so points and allowed maybe like 24, 31 points. This was the exact type of result that they needed after beating Rutgers to show that they can just put their foot down on teams and not let go and keep up the pressure. They weren't letting up when they had 40. They weren't letting up when they had 50, and they got 66. Exactly what you want to see from this team. All we need is a top 30 defense with this offense to win a championship. Yeah, I think you need to see what kind of defensive recruits come in the future and how that's going to develop. All right, Texas has got the ball here less than 3 minutes. They're only 60 yards from the end zone to tie this game. The offense is a top 5 offense in the nation, maybe top 2, maybe top 1. Defense, still not the best in the nation, obviously, but still very good. We can outscore Georgia, and our defense can limit or create enough turnovers on Georgia to limit them. Yeah, maybe. But again, that's it's hypothetical. I don't even know if Ohio State's going to play Georgia this year. They still have to perform against Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan and keep these types of performances up against, the likes of Indiana, the likes of, anybody else they're playing that's not those big 3. Purdue. I think they're playing Purdue this year. I always sort of blank on the schedule. There's so many there's so many games, so many schedules. It's hard to keep track. That's what I'm saying. I think Ohio State would be able to outscore Georgia, but again, that is so hypothetical. I don't even think they're going to play Georgia. I think if Ohio State makes the playoff, they would be a 4 seed. At the rate that's happening, they would be a 4 seed. Especially, I think the worst thing that can happen with OSU today is if Oklahoma ends up winning this game. Because if Oklahoma hasn't played well most of the season, they didn't play that well in the first half of this game, but they've put together a really strong second half with Caleb Williams leading them down. I mean, what are his stats like? Won't be an issue. What won't be an issue? Let me see. I'm looking at the box score. Yeah, Caleb Williams, 182 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 88 rushing yards with a 66-yard run. Texas is driving here. Texas might be able to get something going. They get a catch there on the 30. Spencer Rattler's not the guy. He's not winning the Heisman. It's not going to happen for them. But certainly, Ohio State is in position to get back into the top 5. If Texas beats Oklahoma, and then obviously Iowa or Penn State is losing, one of those happens, Ohio State can get back into the top 5 because Cincinnati will get higher up based on whoever loses Penn State, Iowa, because whoever loses Penn State, Iowa, I think drops out of the top 5. Oklahoma will get back into the top 5 if they beat Texas. Ohio State remains to be seen. Ohio State, I think, would go up to 6th if Oklahoma wins this game. If Oklahoma loses, I think they get back into the top 5. You could have 2 Big Ten teams in the top 5, one of them with 1 loss, the other one undefeated. Early loss was a blessing in disguise. I agree. I think that's the thing that's really good for some college teams. Getting that loss out of the way early, you learn a little bit about yourselves. You learn about your weaknesses. Touchdown, Texas. Wow, great throw. Extra point ties the game with 123. This game is crazy. Oh, Troy typed TD Texas. Okay, I didn't see that. I'm on stream, so I'm a little behind. Xavier Worthy with the catch. What a player he is. What a game this has been. This one might go to overtime. But early losses can teach you a lot about a team. They can tell you sort of how things what your weaknesses are, what you need to improve on, how you need to play against teams in order to beat them. But the early loss might be the difference between the playoff or not making the playoff, because again, like we discussed last week, the Buckeyes need to keep winning games. They need to make the Big Ten championship. They need to make the Big Ten championship, and then I think they make the playoff. Because the loss to Oregon was a bad loss. Extra point, good. 48-48. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So we'll see how much that loss is a blessing in disguise, because the loss is either going to learn enough about themselves that they win out the rest of the season and they make the college football playoff, or the loss is the reason that they don't make the college football playoff. So we have to see how that's going to go. I'm not sure how it will, but I want to see how this game's going to end. This is going to be an exciting ending. 48-48, my God. How will we be fourth? Oklahoma will probably lose, and we have better strength of schedule against them. Oregon, we're better, and either Georgia or Bama will lose, and the committee doesn't respect Cincy. Seem like 2 or 3 seed. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's certainly possible. I just don't see – I think Cincy will be undefeated. I honestly think that Cincinnati might make the playoff because of the fact that they beat Notre Dame, and if they can finish the season undefeated, they might respect Cincinnati and give them a spot. I personally think that Georgia or Bama run the table potentially. I think they're good enough teams. If they have a slip up, then absolutely Ohio State is really back in the conversation. But all of that would be moot if the Buckeyes lose another game. And they could lose another game. They could lose to Penn State. They could lose to Michigan State. They could lose to Michigan. It is possible. It is very realistically possible. And we just have to see how those teams continue to play. We have to find out what kind of a team Iowa or Penn State is when they play each other today. They are not. No, Cincy is not an easy out. We can't just discount out Cincy. I think it's worthwhile for people to discuss the fact that, yeah, Cincy could be discounted out because Cincinnati is not in the Power 5 and could easily be disrespected. But based on the way some of these teams, like they're showing the rankings right now on the Texas-Oklahoma game, I think if Oklahoma wins, they're going to move them up to number 5, which I don't agree with, but I think they're going to move them up to number 5 because it's like, oh, Oklahoma had this great second half against Texas. They could win this game in overtime, and Caleb Williams looks like a great quarterback, and Oklahoma should be a top 5 team. I don't agree with it. I'd also be very interested to see if whoever wins Iowa Penn State potentially goes to number 2. Because maybe Georgia or Alabama is not that impressive today, and one of them drops to number 3. The first playoff rankings will be out in a month. I think for Ohio State, first playoff rankings out in a month. If they can be at the very least in the first 2 out, they got a shot, even with the loss, and maybe even if there is somebody undefeated in the Big Ten. Yeah, that'll be the mainstream narrative, right? Exactly. So, but that was a awesome win for OSU. I'm really happy that they won that way. It was really impressive. I like the way CJ Stroud throws the ball. I love the receivers. This is a great receiving core. Really, really great receiving core. And I only think they're going to get better. I think Ohio State is going to have a field day against Indiana based off of the way they're playing. But the bye week will sort of be either, is the bye week going to kill them, kill their momentum, or is the bye week going to be enough to make the defense better, maybe get some stuff flowing a little bit more offensively, and make Ohio State even better against the Hoosiers? What do you guys think of bye weeks? Because it can go either way. I think the bye week will kill a little bit of a momentum. I think they get off to a slightly slower start against Indiana than they did against Rutgers and Maryland. But I think they'll start to get into a groove as the game goes on. They'll sort of get back into that motion, get back into that rhythm. And all they need against Indiana, offensive rhythm. This offense has rhythm. They can score 50, 60 points. And we talked about that after the Minnesota game. This offense is good enough to be that way. All right, Oklahoma's got to throw here. They got to run the ball out of bounds. All right, Oklahoma might try and kick a really long field goal. He did run out of bounds. Okay, 10 seconds. Oklahoma could kick a really long field goal and win this game. So that bye week is how they play out of the gates in the first quarter against Indiana from the bye week. True test of how this team can rebound and how they can build themselves up into the Penn State game, because they need to have as much momentum as possible going into the Penn State game, because that is the first really crucial game that can make or break their season and their playoff chances. They need to be able to beat Penn State and win relatively convincingly, put a really good loss or get it blocked and lose. I don't know if they'll lose. But I just need to keep playing at this high level. How many QBs in OSU history have had 2 400-yard games? I don't know. That's a good question, David. It's worth a look up. Let me go on the old interwebs and have a good look up. Ohio State Buckeyes single game passing records. Good little conversation to have here. Football statistical leaders offense. Let's go to the Ohio State website. Year by year passing leaders, passing yards. Passing yards in a game. Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins has had 5. Dwayne Haskins had 5 400-yard passing games with OSU. 499 against Northwestern in 2018. Against Purdue, 470, same year. 455 against Indiana. 412 against Minnesota. Yeah. Dwayne Haskins had 5 400 yards passing games in the same season. So there's that. He also threw for 396. Yeah, only 2 Ohio State quarterbacks on this list have 400 yards. Art Schlichter. Oh, Oklahoma. Oh, my God, running up the field. Holy crap. Touchdown Sooners with 1 second. Walk-off touchdown. Oh, my God. What a comeback. Oklahoma runs the ball with 10 seconds left. Kennedy Brooks, 33 yards to the house. Texas fans have their hearts ripped out of their chest with 1 second left. And Oklahoma's going to walk away with another win, and they're going to stay undefeated. Incredible end to the Red River Showdown at the Cotton Bowl. 54-48. Oklahoma with a ridiculous second half. How many points did they score in the second half? They scored 24 points in the fourth quarter. 30 with the extra point, it'll be 35 second half points. Texas was up 28-7 after the first quarter, and they didn't win this game. That is not good for Ohio State. Same story, different year. They can choke. Yep, Texas choked that one. That's for damn sure. I can't believe Oklahoma ran the ball. And how did he just run through Texas? They didn't have enough guys up there. They just ran down the middle for a 33-yard touchdown, and Oklahoma just had it. It was served to them. And that brings us to, I think, a good part of the conversation. What does this mean for Ohio State in the rankings tomorrow? Well, oh my God, it was a direct snap. Look at the blocking. Went to the outside, went back to the inside. Unbelievable. Because I think the committee and I think people around the country are going to see how well Oklahoma played in this second half to come back and win this game. This is Oklahoma's best win this season. And I think this type of a comeback, this type of a win, recency bias will come into effect. This is enough, I think, to put the Sooners maybe back into the top 4. I think potentially the top 4 tomorrow is going to be Bama, Georgia, whoever wins Iowa, Penn State, and Oklahoma. They might put Oklahoma above Cincinnati after this game. And Ohio State, I agree with Ryan. I think Ohio State is only going to move up 1 spot to number 6. As of right now, how the rankings would be Bama 1, Georgia 2, winner of Iowa, Penn State 3, Oklahoma 4, Cincinnati 5, Ohio State 6, and then I think whoever loses Iowa, Penn State will be 7. But that will be the interesting thing. How that Iowa Penn State game goes will determine kind of whether or not you put the loser of that Iowa Penn State game above Ohio State. I don't know, Ryan. I don't know if we need Oregon to lose another game. Because if Oregon loses more, If they have a second loss and they continue to lose, then that loss that Ohio State has looks worse. And the worst possible thing for OSU is to make that Oregon loss look worse, because if you've got Iowa or Penn State after today, whoever loses that game, you would probably agree that that is a more quality loss than Ohio State losing to Oregon. Quality losses count for something. Oh my God, Texas tried a big return, didn't get it. Oklahoma wins 55-48 in a crazy game. Switch over to Iowa, Penn State. A Kinnick about to start here. But I think Oregon losing more games doesn't benefit Ohio State at this point, because Oregon's out of the playoff race. They're not going to make the playoff. It's basically going to be whether or not Bama or Georgia both make it, if they're both undefeated by the SEC championship, if the committee likes Cincinnati, whoever wins the Big Ten. But Oklahoma's back in the conversation. Oklahoma just put together one of the best second halves this season. Huge win in Texas against the Longhorns. Caleb Williams should be the starter for the rest of the season. And the Sooners kind of put some of the doubters to bed that they were kind of not a real number 6. And they were showing that in the first half. But I think the committee's going to see that second half and think Spencer Rattler was not the quarterback for Oklahoma. Caleb Williams is going to make this team great. He made this team great in the second half. He's going to be the starter the rest of the year. And with Caleb Williams, Oklahoma might be a playoff team. And that's not good for OSU, because that just spells a little bit more chaos, that Oklahoma finishes undefeated, Caleb Williams plays amazing the rest of the season, looks great, and Cincinnati finishes undefeated. Where does that leave a Big Ten champion who might have one loss? We'll have to see. But I guess keep playing like this and run the table, everything will work out. I think they control their destiny. I would agree with that, Troy. I think there's something to be said about that, but I think they control their destiny less if Oklahoma looks this good the rest of the season and wins out, and if the committee is kind enough to the Bearcats to put them in the top 4. Because Ohio State with one loss against an undefeated Cincy and an undefeated Oklahoma team, a better-looking Oklahoma team. Darn big fingers on the phone. Yeah, I got you. Kerp. How can Ohio State Kerp playing like this? They can Kerp it up, you know? But that might be where the debate is in December. Obviously, this could all change, and that's why we love college football. All this can change within a week. Crazy results can happen, and it can all really go about. But in the present time, the way that I see this conversation, if Ohio State wins the Big Ten with one loss, how it's going to work out in December would be, where do we put Ohio State against a good Oklahoma side with Caleb Williams starting, undefeated, and a really good Cincinnati team that's undefeated? Where do we see that? If OSU wins out and so does Oregon, do you think the committee puts an undefeated Cincy in over a one-loss Oregon? I don't think Oregon makes the playoff. I don't think the Pac-12 and the ACC, in my eyes, is out of the picture. I just don't see Oregon making the playoff. The only way would be, kind of in this scenario, Ryan, where other stuff kind of falls into their lap. I think the only way Oregon is in the playoff picture is they would need Cincinnati to lose a game. I think they would need Oklahoma to lose a game. They would probably need Alabama or Georgia to lose a game before the SEC championship. To me, that's the only way. Oregon needs a lot more help to make the playoff than Ohio State, because Oregon plays in the Pac-12 and Ohio State plays in the Big Ten. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. So that's sort of where I see that argument going. Since he's still question mark with their schedule. Yeah, Notre Dame was good win, but the most were cupcakes. Right, and that's what's going against Cincinnati, which is why some people are probably thinking, well, the playoff will be SEC winner, Oklahoma, Big Ten winner, and then who's that fourth team? And this could all go completely out the window, this type of a conversation and the way that we're sort of thinking about the playoff, or at least the way I'm thinking about the way the committee's thinking about the playoff, trying to read their minds. This could all go out the window if Georgia or Alabama lose a game before the SEC championship. Say Georgia loses to Auburn today. If Georgia loses to Auburn today, that completely changes the narrative, because Georgia would basically need to beat Alabama to get back into the playoff conversation. Even though Georgia has 2 really good wins over Clemson and Arkansas, a loss to Auburn or a loss for the rest of the season takes them out of the picture. But then you have teams like Wake Forest or Kentucky if they keep winning. The fact that we're having this conversation this early, we're a month into the season, the playoff picture is already getting, dissected. There's all these different scenarios that could happen. A lot of interesting things that could come about this college football season, which is why I prefer talking about the hypotheticals of ranking teams rather than how a team could play against another team. As of right now, I just don't see Georgia or Bama losing to anybody the way they've been playing, but that could change. What if, if Georgia played this Oklahoma team with Williams as the quarterback, maybe that changes completely and Oklahoma beats Georgia. Who knows? Who knows? That's why I want to see I want to see the expanded playoff. I want to see more games. It'd be fun. May not know our destiny until after beating Iowa in the CG. Iowa wins the West regardless of day. Well, again, we don't know if Ohio State's even making the Big Ten championship. Remember, they got to play Penn State, Michigan. All three of those teams, as of this second, are above Ohio State. They're undefeated. If Michigan keeps undefeated, the next biggest game after Ohio State, Penn State, the next biggest game in the Big Ten East is Michigan State, Michigan. Michigan State is going to be a top 10 team by Sunday. They will be in the top 10, guaranteed. Michigan State's offense is very, very good. Not comparable to Ohio State in terms of talent, but Michigan State's execution offensively is, I think, pretty comparable, just based on how well they get their receivers open, how well their receivers catch the ball. Walker's their running back is really good. Ohio State scores more points than Michigan State, but Michigan State's offense is right there. They are really, really good. That's the thing. I'm still worried. I'm still worried for where Ohio State's destiny lies. I don't think Ohio State has a gimme road to the playoff. And even if they win out, I still don't think it's a gimme they make it. I still don't think so. I'll be honest, I think Oklahoma will lose a game. That's why I keep bringing up Oregon, but I agree if it plays out the way you were laying it out, Oregon's out. Yeah, Oregon's out right now. Oregon's out. ACC's out. Pac-12's out. I don't see it. I don't see a difference in what's happening there. But the way Oklahoma has been, but that's the thing. We just saw the best Oklahoma team we saw in this second half against Texas with Williams as their quarterback. Clearly, Spencer Rattler is not the guy. Spencer Rattler is not the guy for them. He's not the guy. He was a Heisman preseason favorite. He's clearly not the quarterback. He's probably going to be looking at the transfer portal after this season. Oklahoma with Caleb Williams might be one of the best teams in the country. It's very possible. They showed that in the second half. They were great in this second half against Texas. So I don't know if Oklahoma loses another game if Caleb Williams is the starter. You look at the rest of Oklahoma's schedule. When's their next toughest game? Oklahoma State, which is not until rivalry weekend. They play TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State. It's kind of where we're at. So, yeah, David, I agree. Cincy needs Notre Dame to win out. So I'm just trying to figure something out with this chair. But I think I'm going to call it there. I know it was a bit of a shorter post-game show, but I got some other stuff I got to work on. And also, I am starving. I need to eat some food. I didn't eat all game. So I'm going to go about my business. I really enjoyed this conversation, guys. Thank you for joining me. 2 weeks' time, Buckeyes are going to take on Indiana, the Hoosiers. It's going to be a big game. And that game, hopefully, the offense looks even better. And they go against Penn State, and it's going to be a tight one. Pac-12 has no respect. Lost to Stanford, hurt Oregon more than OSU losing her. Yep, Pac-12 gets no respect, but maybe the alliance will change that. Maybe the alliance, people. It's all about the alliance. But right now, that alliance is separated. So the Pac-12 doesn't get no damn respect. So I'll see you guys. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate the compliment. Go Buckeyes, David. I agree with you right there. Big win for Ohio State, 66-17 against Maryland. Unbelievable. Enjoy the rest of your college football Saturday. And 2 weeks' time, Buckeyes, Hoosiers. See you then. Bye, guys.